Today in our 2006 Yamaha Kodiak ATV, we'll be having a look at and installing the Superwinch LT3000 ATV winch, part number SW1130220, in conjunction with the Bulldog winch custom fit steel ATV winch mount, part number BDW15138.
All right, here's what our winch looks like installed. And as you can see, we didn't lose any of our ground clearance at all on our ATV. So our winch won't cause us to get stuck, but if we do get stuck, we can use it to get out. On the side here, we have our spool. We turn it clockwise, it's engaged. When we turn it counterclockwise, it's disengaged, and we can pull our cable out. If we re-engage it, we can use the winch motor to pull it back in. Now we have two ways of moving our winch in and out from the ATV. We have our handlebar switch here, go up on it, goes out, go down on it, comes back in. We have our remote switch here, so if we need to hook up to a tree and drag the ATV up without someone on it, we can do that. Lift up the dust cover, plug it in, and with the remote, just like on the handlebar, up goes out, down goes in. Here we are with our winch cable hooked up to a tree, and our ATV is stuck out on this hill. Now we'll use our winch to bring our ATV closer to the tree. As you can see, even with this sticky mud, is able to easily move the ATV on up the hill.
Our winch features a 3,000-pound line pull, a 1.2 horsepower permanent magnet motor, has a 50-foot long wire rope, and our handheld remote features a 12-foot long cable. Right, to begin our install, we're going to start doing some pre-assembly work on our winch, our bracket, our Fairlead mount, and our Fairlead, as well as our power cables for our winch. We'll start with the power cables. We'll loosen the nut up, remove the washers, flat washer, lock washer, leaving one of our flat washers on. We're working with the positive side. We can identify that because we have this red ring right here, so we'll use our red cable. So we'll take our red cable, slide on one of our protective caps here over the end of it until it comes out, like so. Slide it on the terminal, reinstall our flat washer, our lock washer, then our nut. Then we'll snug that down with a 10mm socket. Once we have it tight, we'll slide our protective cap back on over the terminal. And we'll do the same for our negative. We'll make sure we're using the longest cables with our kit. Now we want to make sure that our Superwinch logo is facing the upright direction so you can read it. We'll flip it upside down where we have our nut plates where we can install our winch mount. We'll line up the holes where they match. So it'll be our middle holes. Okay, now we'll take our longer bolts, a lock washer, and a flat washer, and we will attach our winch to the mounting bracket. Okay, with all four of those started, we can snug them down using a 13mm socket. Now we'll take our Fairlead mounting plate, stick it underneath our winch mount, go through the middle holes, take a bolt, and then a nylon lock nut, and secure it on both sides. And then we'll snug it down with a 13mm wrench and socket. Okay, with the Fairlead mount installed, we'll now make sure our winch cable's out. We'll slide it through our Fairlead. You want to have the big roller on bottom with your warning label facing up. We'll take a bolt, go through the hole, place a lock nut on. We'll do the same for the other location. And we'll snug those down and get them 13 millimeters. Now we'll take our hook, release the cotter pin, pull out the pin, slide the hook over the cable, reinstall the pin, followed by the cotter pin. Then we'll bend it back out. With that bent out, our hook's now secure. We'll release the clutch on the winch. And we'll roll the cable back up. Lock the clutch in. Now it's out of our way. To begin the install on the ATV, we need to remove the bumper. There are 6 bolts that hold it in place. We have 2 at the top, so we'll remove those first. These are 12 millimeter bolts. Now on each side of our bumper, we have 2 more 12 millimeter bolts to remove. So we'll remove those. Additionally, we have a plastic clip on each side that holds the bumper to our fascia. We'll pop out the center section with a flathead screwdriver or trim panel tool. Okay. And the whole thing pulls out once you have the center section pulled. Okay, with those released, you can just grab the bumper, pull it straight off. Okay, with their bumper off, these are our front holes that face towards the front of the ATV. These are our upper mounting bolts that were on the side. We'll take our winch, slide it in position. Make sure that the side bolts here in our winch plate line up with our upper mounting holes, and then we can install some hardware. So we'll drop down a bolt that'll go through our small hole in the winch plate and the large hole in the bumper. Place on a large washer and then a nylon lock nut. We'll leave these loose for right now. These are just going to help hold the winch plate in place so it doesn't fall. With the winch assembly loosely attached to our bumper using the bottom bolts, we can reinstall the bumper now. Get our top bolts started here loosely. This will just help support the weight of the bumper while we get our other hardware in place. Okay, now we'll reuse the original bottom bolts. Make sure it's lined up. Tighten these down by hand a little bit. And we'll do the same on the other side. Okay, now for our upper side bolt here, we'll be using the longer gold bolt that comes with our mounting bracket. Okay, with all of our hardware started now, we can snug them down. The gold bolts are 13 millimeter, so they are different than what the side bolts were originally. We'll make sure we tighten down our winch plate to the bumper itself too now. Okay, now we need to take off our luggage rack here. So our 2 bolts that went to the bumper, we'll remove those again. Only reason we put those 2 back in was to help support the weight when we put the bumper back on. We have 2 more close to the gauge cluster. On the underside, we have a 10 millimeter bolt, 1 on each side. Now we can lift the luggage rack off. Okay, now we have 2 plastic screws that we'll remove. They're plastic fastener screws, so you undo the middle. Once you have the middle taken out, you can just grab the panel, lift up, and the fastener will come out with it. Now we'll remove our seat by grabbing the lever on the back, pulling up, and we'll set it aside. Now we'll grab this side panel here, pull it out towards us. pull out and remove it. Do the same on the other side. Now below each handlebar, we have a 4mm Allen key. If we twist the handlebar away, we have clean access to it. Or remove these. Do the same on the other side. Now on each side of our fuel tank cover, we have a 10mm bolt that holds it to the frame. We'll remove those. Now we'll unscrew our gas cap. And we can grab up our gas tank cover now and slide it to the back and off. And we'll put back on the gas cap so we don't have to smell gas. Now underneath our gas tank cover, we have 2 more plastic fasteners, 1 on each side. So we'll lift it up over our speedometer here, slide it over to our driver's side, and we'll unplug the wiring harnesses. In order to unplug our wiring harnesses, we'll push back on this tab and pull to separate. Okay, we went ahead and routed our power wire and our ground wire towards our battery area, making sure we avoided any moving parts or sources of heat such as the exhaust. We just zip tied to existing wiring harnesses along the way. Now we're going to be mounting all of our solenoids and circuit breakers in our storage bin underneath our seat. So we're going to need to cut notches in our plastic in a couple spots for our cables to pass through into that area, and we can still close the seat down. I'll use a rotary tool for this. You could use a sharp utility knife if you have one, but whatever you have works fine. So I've already marked out the areas we're going to have to cut. Okay, even though it doesn't look like much, that gives us plenty of room for the cables to fit down in this area and the seat to close down over them. Now our storage compartment underneath the seat, we're going to put our relay box right here in this area. We're going to drill 2 holes through our storage compartment and install our hardware to secure this. Now I'll use a paint marker holding our relay in position on the side of the storage bin, and we'll mark the 2 notches that are the mounting tabs. Okay, with those marked, we're going to take it down and drill out our holes. Okay, now we'll take some machine screws with some large washers that we have, and we'll stick them through the hole. And we'll mount the box on the other side. Place on another flat washer. Okay, with our flat washer in place, place on a lock washer, and then we'll thread on a nut, and we'll do the same for the other one. All right, here's what it looks like tightened down now. So you see we have a nice solid mount here. It's not going to go anywhere, and it keeps it up out of the elements. Okay, we went ahead and attached our circuit breaker panel here with 2 loom clamps on the cables. This will help hold it in place. And we carry these loom clamps on our website if you'd like to purchase a few. Our longer cable here will go directly to the positive terminal on our battery, and our shorter one will go to our solenoid. Okay, our short lead that goes to our breaker, that'll go on this terminal here, which has a red dot on it, the one closest to this 3 small wires. So just take the nut off, slide back over, and replace the nut. Now the red lead that comes from our winch will go to the other red terminal here, the one closest to the side. The black lead off of our winch goes right next to it to the terminal that's black. Now our other black terminal here gets the black cable that goes directly to the negative post on our battery. Now we use a 10mm socket and tighten up all those nuts. Now there's this Phillips screw that holds this panel in place that covers our battery cables. We're going to remove this. lift the cover off, and route our cables in the same position as the power and ground cables that go to our battery. And we'll reinstall that cover now. Okay, now we'll remove the Phillips screw that holds our positive battery cable in place. Place our terminal over it, reinstall the screw. And we'll do the same for our negative. Okay, beautiful. Okay, now we need to find a place to mount our remote connector for our remote wired winch controls. I'm gonna put it right above our gear shifter here. And I'm gonna use the dust cover as a template to mark where we need to drill out our holes. So we'll do the 2 screw holes first. Make a pilot hole right in the middle of our large hole. We'll enlarge that out until we don't see any paint marker left with a step bit. Okay, with the hole enlarged, we'll now feed our wires through it. We have our dust cover back on the back side of our connector. Push it through the hole. Now we'll secure it in place with some screws. Now we'll place on our flat washer, our lock washer, and then our nut. Do the same for the other one. All right, we'll hold our nut in place with the wrench, and then we'll tighten our screw on down. Now the wiring for our remote winch controls and our handlebar winch controls, we went ahead and routed it behind our fender well here, where it comes out right here, and we have it zip tied up to our frame in a couple locations. Goes behind our rear fender, where it comes up right here where our battery cables were, and then down into that slot. I'll just tuck those in the slot we cut out. We'll make our connections later. Now our handlebar switch, we need a mount location where it's not going to interfere with any of our other controls, like our choke lever here. We can adjust it how we need it. We still want it to be easily accessible for us while we're driving. So we'll loosen one of these nuts, take it off on our handlebar clamp, get it around our handlebar, and re-secure the nut. Now that we have that on, we'll position the switch as we need before we tighten everything down. Right here, this general area, we still can reach it while driving and reach our choke control. So we'll tighten up those hex head bolts with a 4mm Allen key, and we'll use a wrench to hold the nuts in place. Okay, our green and our black wires that come off our solenoid, I put some heat shrink over the wires so we can seal up our connections here later. Our black wire will connect to the female end of the black wire that goes to our hand control harness. The green wire here will go to the blue wire on the male end. Okay, now our black wire lead here that comes off our hand control harness, we will plug in to the black that goes to our handlebar harness. And the blue will go to the green on our handlebar harness. Now we'll slide our heat shrink over our connections. We have this heat shrink available on our website, and we'll use a heat gun as well, which we have available on our website, to cover up all of our connections. Okay, now we need to find a wire that goes to our ignition switch that only has power when the ignition switched on. That'll be this brown and red wire. So we'll go ahead and we'll cut this wire right in the middle. And we'll strip back both ends. Okay, now our 2 red wires that come from our switches, we have one for the handlebar one and one for the remote one. We're gonna tie one in on each side here. So we'll measure off how much we're gonna need on both of these. Cut off the excess, strip them back, twist it together with one of those wires. Doesn't matter which one, you're gonna have one on each side. We'll use a heat shrink butt connector, which you have available on our website. Stick it over one end, crimp it down. We'll do the same for the other end here. Stick that in the other end of the butt connector, crimp it down. And we'll use our heat gun again to shrink that on down. And that completes our look at and installation of the Superwinch LT3000 ATV Winch, part number SW1130220, in conjunction with the Bulldog Winch Custom Fit Steel ATV Winch Mount, part number BDW15138, on our 2006 Yamaha Kodiak ATV.